morning, and welcome to another episode of To The Point. Is the very first one for the week. It's the 21st of October, 2019. And on the front burner this morning, this morning's topic is child sexual abuse. And this program was really spurred following recent events here in Grenada, and I thought it's a fitting initiative to have these two representatives in studio with me this morning. I am joined by representatives of the Grenada Association of Professional Social Workers. I have founder and director Miss Alva Lawrence and Vice President Miss Anne Greaves. Welcome, ladies.
Good morning, Blossom. Thank you for having us on the program.
Thank you very much for attending. I'm also expecting an attorney at law who will be in studio with me. He's running just a little bit late, so hopefully he'll be able to join in on the discussion. So, ladies, let's get right into the matter. Child sexual abuse and its prevalence in Grenada. How much is it an issue here in Grenada? I know it's prevalent, but just shed some light for us.
Well, there was actually over 201 cases reported to the Child Protection Authority for 2018. Right, so that's the stats. That's the most recent stats that we have. We can't say how many of those cases would have come before the court. We know that it's prevalent. You've said it's prevalent. We know it's a national issue. The government has made that clear when they actually started the committee, the Sexual Abuse Committee, which I understand is now completed its task, that it is a major issue that needs to be dealt with here in Grenada. And we, as an organization, have been working fastidiously to try and raise awareness about this issue and to also, speak on issues that affects our children here in Grenada, both systematically as well as, So we, what I can say, what sexual abuse is? Sexual abuse is forcing a child to take part in any sexual activities at all. There's no real main definition, but that's the clear one we can actually say. And there is contact abuse, non-contact abuse, and as we know hear a lot about now, online abuse. So, for example, contact abuse, touching of the body. It's whether the child is wearing clothes or not. It doesn't matter whether they're naked or not. Once you touch that child, right, that's sexual abuse. Rape or penetration by putting an object, body part inside the child's mouth or vagina or anus, and forcing a child to take part in any other sexual activity, making a child take off their clothes, getting them to touch somebody's genitals or masturbate them. And you got the non-contact abuse, which would showing pornography to a child, getting them to view disturbing sexual images, and allowing them to send you images of themselves through the phone. Mm-hmm. And allow getting them to watch sexual pornography and stuff like that. Right. And really and truly, this one I think is very pertinent here in Grenada. Not taking proper measures to prevent a child from being exposed to sexual activities by others. I think that I would say this one is one I personally have been concerned about when I look at the proximity of some of the homes and how our children are raised and what our children see. I'm actually very concerned about that one. Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about online and grooming. You want to talk about online and grooming?
I just want to say that as an association, we really are outraged by the number of incidents that have come through the courts. And that's the numbers that Anne has mentioned is only the ones we know about. Right. What about the ones we don't know about? Right. It's Now people are more aware because we've been out there. We've been out there demonstrating in the past when we feel that justice hasn't been served by through the court system, the lenient sentences that was meted out. So we have been out there highlighting, the issue of child sexual abuse and the suffering that children go through by being sexually abused. 20 years ago, when I first came to Grenada, it was something that people thought isn't something to be talked about.
Right.
You just hear that somebody may have been abused, and there didn't seem to be any action that were taken, any formal action, So we are pleased now that we have Facebook, that people are out there talking about it more and really highlighting the problems that we are facing currently in our country of child sexual abuse, which seriously needs to be dealt with, because we cannot continue to have our children being damaged as a result of being sexually abused.
The issue of online predators, is it great in Grenada? I know in the US and foreign countries we have, those facilities that they facilitate these pedophiles and predators access to young children. But when it comes to online predators, do we have that problem here in Grenada, or is it?
I really can't say, but what we have had is that we certainly there's been reports of people posting images of children on the phones. We've had that, and that has been known. One other thing I want to say about pornography, I'm amazed at how many young children watch pornography, because they have that, their smartphone, and they have access to that smartphone. Parents buy these expensive phones for many of the young children, not really knowing what they're watching on it. And a lot of children do watch. I'm amazed how many children watch pornography here in our country. I mean, we do know, well, if indeed that was posted online, that they would have had to use a webcam or something to take photograph of children. We know grooming has been going on for some time, right? Where people, give children things. Oh, we'll pay your bus fare, we'll do this, we'll buy you Kentucky, we'll top up your phone and stuff like that. And it's actually difficult for children to actually resist that. Grooming is hard to understand. That it's a form of, for children to understand, it's a form of sexual abuse. It's difficult for them because they are, somebody's giving me something and they're being nice to me, and yes, and I need this Kentucky KFC. I'm hungry. If I don't pay my bus, it's an extra money that I may have to be able to buy something else as well, phone top up and stuff like that. So we do know grooming goes on a lot here in Grenada, and that's of concern,
So parents and guardians need to be very aware of this, and to be able to talk to their children about grooming and explain what could happen.
I just wanted to say to parents too, it's actually very difficult. We understand it's difficult raising children, but I think you really need to take time to actually know your child. And I always say to people now, understand your normal sexual behaviors of children. You need to know what age they start masturbating, play with themselves. They do that from a very young age. And you understand that. Look at that. It's nothing that's extraordinary. These are normal child sexual development. Taboo here, but it is normal. And then if you see anything that is, well, my child is that age, he shouldn't be doing this, he or she shouldn't be doing this, you act on it. It's a concern. Right. It's a real concern. It's hard to say, who do you leave your children with? Who do you leave your children with? Who do you trust with your children? Personally, I would say, as a grandmother and great-grandmother, I trust no one.
I agree. I don't blame you. I really don't blame you.
From my experience, I trust no one. Because from my professional experience, I have known grandfather, whoever, to take off nappies from babies and masturbate babies in order to get there. And, well, yes, that's known fact. So, and as we do know, sexual abuse is committed it's prevalent within the family. It's always, many times it's people who and right there in your community. Often it's not people that the child doesn't know. But it's not stranger.
But then people also find it very difficult to accept that somebody would abuse a 3-month-old child.
Right.
But that actually happens, what Annie's saying. Actually happens. But, they would find it very difficult to really take that in. The issue of talking to your children about, the graphic information, where Anne mentioned masturbation. People find it, a parent would find it very difficult, I think, to explain that to their children. Right. And I think that's where we need to be able to be talking to parents more, that they really need to be more graphic with children, that you can't just say, don't allow somebody to touch you. You have to say where.
Right. You have to be specific
where is it?
These days because it's no
where is it?
Exactly.
And what type of touch is good and bad touch,
Right.
So it has to be really graphic.
Unfortunately, that's the age we're in. We're going to take a quick break. My other guest has joined us in the studio, and when we come back, we'll continue the discussion about the prevalence and the issue of child sexual abuse. Keep it locked to K105 and GBN Television.
Sissons truly cares about your paint job. We give you the results you wish for. Sissons understands your needs and responds to it.
Get the finish you want with quality that is unmatched. Nothing compares to Sissons paint.
No matter your need, at home or on that industrial project,
Sissons has the perfect color solution for you.
Sissons paints for good looks that last. Available at all major hardware retailers island-wide.
See it first on GBN. All the stories, from politics to industrial unrest. Tourism. Light it up. Light it up.
Station 2 Grenada.
Entertainment. Sports and culture.
Great shot there of Anderson Peters from Grenada, the Commonwealth Games bronze medalist.
See more on GBN, your most credible source for information.
Breaking barriers. Going beyond the ordinary. Examining the stories beyond what meets the eyes. GBN gets to the meat of the matter. Join us on GBN Television, Classic Radio, gbn.gd, or on Facebook via your smartphones and other devices. We take you beyond the headlines every Monday night at 8:30 p.m. We are GBN, rated number 1.
Hello everyone, here is an invitation to join K105 every Sunday from October 20th to December 29th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. for Yuletide Sundays with host God.
welcome back to The Point. I am joined by my other guest, Attorney at Law Edwin. Good morning, Mr.
Good morning. Good morning. I am hanging in there.
I like
just living.
Just living. You can't just live. You have to live.
Yeah.
Well, my slogan is I'm living and sinning.
Oh, Lord.
That's why, all have sinned and come short of the glory of the Lord. And so I look forward to the redemption and virtues of, whatever.
Not purposely sinning, Edwin. You're not purposely sinning. You cannot be doing that.
Well, some would say that as you live and breathe, you sin. But, I'm looking forward to being a better person every day. And I'm sure all of us are. In spite of this crisis that we have in our courts and with sex abuse, it's a crisis.
Yeah, crisis is definitely
in our nation as a whole. As a whole.
Before we get into the legal issues of child sexual abuse, let's talk about the signs first of all, Ms. Breeze. What signs can parents look for?
If you're actually looking, if you're actually talking about safeguarding, right? Your parents safeguarding their children, right? You need to look for anal and vaginal soreness and itching, bruising or bleeding near the genital areas. Sometimes the child is sore when sitting or even walking.
Right.
Unusual discharge, and we know a lot of children have actually got STIs as well, And of course, the most obvious one, when Mrs. Lawrence used to work at the program for adolescent mothers, pregnancy, right? So you look at, again, changing behavior and mood, children isolating themselves, inappropriate sexual behavior. Because one of the things we do know is that children reenact the trauma. So if they're not actually doing it to themselves, they may doing it to a younger sibling or friend. Yeah. So I just want
we have bedwetting.
Yes. Yeah.
Self-harming.
Yes, that's it.
And frozen watchfulness in a child.
Frozen
watchfulness.
What is that one?
That's a child just stare.
Oh, okay.
And look frozen.
Okay.
So, smearing, you would have children smearing
feces on the walls.
Yeah. These are all signs that something is terribly wrong with your child.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I like frozen watchfulness. I didn't know there was a term for it.
Yeah, frozen watchfulness.
In addition to the issue of child sexual abuse, we also have an issue when it comes to the legal system and some of the sentences that are being handed down to these predators and pedophiles. What can you tell us about these court cases where it seems like these accusers and perpetrators are given these lenient sentences? Somebody classed it on social media the other day as a high five. You get to the courthouse and you get a high five, and you're able to walk away.
Well, let's be clear. That is the furthest from the truth. As someone who represents persons who are accused of sexual offenses, whether those are indictable, meaning that they have to be tried in the high court, or summary offenses, they're tried in the magistrate's court. I can tell you that that is nowhere near the truth. In fact, we have judges here who, I should say justices in the high court in particular, who mete out sentences that are hardly a high five or a slap on the wrist. But we have, I think there's a recognition. I mean, the courts are not in isolation to what we see in the rest of society. We are an oversexed society. We have to admit that. The gyrations we see at Carnival time, the remarks that young men exchange with young women, the insinuations that in fact could be otherwise passed as casual remarks, all tinted with suggestions of sex. We are oversexed. But we're not alone. This is not to excuse it, but it is to explain that even in, say, Antigua, the judicial system there recognized that because of this prevalence of sexual violence, particularly that which exposes young people, they have a special court. Jamaica has gun violence, so they have a gun court.
Right.
Antigua observed that they were approaching a crisis. So they have a court that's its only jurisdiction is for sexual offenses. I think that we should have such a court because we have the highest number in the Eastern Caribbean of sexual offenses. Grenada outstrips far and away. Barbados has something like 64 offenses reported. In 2017, Grenada had 264 offenses reported. And if you, by comparison, if you look at Jamaica with 0.8%, our population is 0.8%. We far outstrip Jamaica in sexual offenses. Now, I want to make the distinction between the frolic between young people, 16, 17. We know the age of consent here in Grenada is 16 years old. But I think where we have 18-year-old boys frolicking with 15-year-old girls, I think we ought to treat that differently. And our Juvenile Act does provide for it. We can divert a lot of these cases down a particular path under our Juvenile Act because, if you are my age, if you are 60 plus, then you know that as young people, we engage in frolic when we were 15 and 16. Not the type of frolicking we see today. Of course, pornography, easily accessible on cell phones for our young people. So our courts have decided that, our law has decided that we have various tracks to deal with sexual offenses between young people and also the way we deal with adults. It's very different. And I think it should be. Now, we've had some disparate sentences. For example, we just had an incident in Grenville where we had a sentence that may be perceived by many as what you describe the social media.
A slap on the wrist.
A slap on the wrist. But on our books, we provide for the strongest sanction. I mean, the case is going to be appealed. Is the Director of Public Prosecutions has indicated that he's going to appeal this case because there are laws on our books. We may not enforce laws in Grenada, but we have many laws on our books. We have trite laws. For example, don't fly a kite. It's actually, don't beat a drum. But we have serious laws dealing with carnal knowledge where young people are concerned, and the sentence could be as much as 15 years for exposing a child under 13 to the kind of overt sexual acts that we have seen, for example, in the Grenville case.
So can I just ask, is it discretion by the magistrate or the judge in meeting out?
Well, isn't that the $64,000 question? This is what everyone is asking. I can tell you that being a judicial officer, I'm a lawyer. I'm not a judge or a magistrate, but I could tell you that it must be a very tough job. Sometimes a person comes to you for the first time, never having committed any offense, ever, not even spitting on a pot hound, right? Never committing an offense. And the most egregious act, they are now before you on. And they plead guilty right away. They say, I had a mental lapse. I did something woefully wrong. Now, how is a judicial officer to deal with this? I understand in the Grenville case, this young man came to Grenada to be ordained member of a pastor.
I've heard that as well.
No. I would tell you, I think we have to look a lot of these. A lot of our religious people hide behind the cloak of religious prerogatives.
But don't go, Edwin. I think what we need to actually accept is that any person, it doesn't matter what your profession are, that you are capable of committing such an offence.
Well, I don't think the clergy is exempt because we know.
No, the clergy isn't.
Well, let's say this. Let's say this. The Catholic Church. Remember.
We know the history of that.
No. Do we really? Because in America, we know that the Catholic Church is guilty. Catholic priests, in particular, are probably the world's best-known pedophiles who have hidden behind this cloak of religious prerogatives. And for many, many years, it's something that we don't accept here in the Caribbean. And I think that this is something we ought to peel back and look particularly at our religious leaders who hide and are given cover. Even the Pope has had to come out and say, listen, we can't do this anymore. But I think that this is a dilemma for our judicial officers. How do you treat with a person who has come before you for the very first time with such an egregious offence?
Can I just say that might not be the first offence.
That's I was going to say that.
Might not be the first offence.
First time he's coming before the court, but you don't know. You would have done it before.
He would have done this before to other children.
That's right.
What does a judicial officer know? It's only the facts that are before you.
Yeah.
But isn't there a minimum when dealing with these cases? A minimum sentence that can be beholden?
For example,
$100 can be the minimum.
Well, for example, as I said, the DPP is going to appeal the case, and we'll see what happens when. But Section 187 and 183C of our criminal code does provide. It says, may I read it?
Sure.
It's brief. 183 says any person of the age of 21 years or over who has carnal knowledge of another person under 13, when this person is either a stepchild, a foster child, a ward, and I think that may be applicable here, dependent in the custody of the person having such carnal knowledge, shall be liable to imprisonment for 15 years. So that option was certainly available to the judicial officer.
Blossom, I just want to say, right, we were marching on the street. We were actually doing a number of things to raise awareness about lenient sentences. And when the criminal code came in, right, I thought, yes, this is going to make a big difference.
You're referring to the amendment in 2012.
The amendment in 2012. And I thought, yes, because the march we had was in May 2012 when we took to the streets marching against injustice. And one of the case was of a buggery, right, where the judge gave a caning if the man could take it, and $8,000 fine. And we took to the street. And I remember seeing this recent case now, the Grenville case on social media. And I thought, no, this is fake news. This can't be happening here in Grenada again. This is fake news. And I just scanned it. I couldn't believe it until my colleague here, Alva, started to talk. I could not believe it because I thought the changes to the criminal code. But then we had the one earlier in the year in St. Mark's.
Right.
There's a number of cases. I mean, I have actually told people, look, complain to the DPP, complain to the Minister, the Attorney General, because you are very concerned about the lenient sentence that's been given. Our children need to be protected. Our families need to be protected. I cannot be sitting here and telling our family, mothers, fathers, people in the community to report child sexual abuse when it matter comes to court, there is no justice at all. No justice.
But having said that, we've acknowledged when stiff sentences has been given out by judges and magistrates because they've sent people to prison for these offences.
Well, there should be uniformity.
Yeah, there should be uniformity. And when there isn't, we need to speak out against it.
Well, let's be clear about something. It's a minefield to suggest that we should have uniformity in sentences. Because let's look at it. All individuals, people come to the court, before the court, clothed in very different circumstances, even if they commit the same offense. A young man, for example, in St. Mark's, had an encounter with a young girl at night for 3 years. while he lived in the house of a family. Magistrate gave him 21 years. Right? The High Court judge meted out a sentence of 21 years. Quite appropriate under the circumstances. Someone comes before the court and they have had sex with a young girl. He is 19, she is 15. Well, we decided to take that away from the regular route of imprisonment because this young man was a virgin. And the girl gave him all the directions to come to the house. Make sure her mother was not at home at the time. Look to see if a particular curtain is in the window, because she's going to give him a color signal as to which house he should come to. We have cases, for example, where...
How old is that? Is that a child or is that the over the age of...
No, she's 15.
She's 15,
but
she's still
unable.
a child?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so whether she gave him direction or not, she's still a child.
Well, right. So No, that's not a rape.
Well,
that is not rape. There's been no assault.
Oh, right. And if he didn't assault her, yeah.
Right, he did not assault her. So we need to, everybody comes to the court, and that's the nuanced nature of the law. Where we have a 35 or 55-year-old man having carnal knowledge of a 15-year-old girl, throw him under the bus. Put him under the court, but we have to...
And say throw him under the bus.
Right.
But let us use the full force of the law.
I could assure you that the law right now in Grenada is being... Of course, we have exceptions, but the law is being absolutely enforced.
Before we continue, let me take this phone call. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Citizen Welch, and to your guests.
Good morning.
First of all, let me say, Mr. Edwin, I fully agree with you when you say to the people of this here country that they ought to be, quote-unquote, be aware or beware of the flocked frock. Some of the most dangerous people in this here world are those who wear the frock. But let's go on to the most important thing here, because what I'm making is a comment and a suggestion. Hear this. What has happened here with this young boy is a demonstration that the judicial, I retract that. First of all, it should be the legislature has turned down the people and let the people of this here country down. Albeit, I'm happy to hear that there are such high figures as it relates to sentencing 15 years and so on for certain things, because that's what you read the 183, is it, of the criminal code? It's rather interesting. I never knew of the existence of this. Begs the question then, why is it that when things like this of such a nature, and you know what happened to that little boy? I understand it was a little boy. I'm correct?
Yes, he was 5 years old.
So there we go. A boy, what we had there was a double whammy. The act in itself, and it was a homosexual act. It was a homosexual. So it's a double whammy. And I don't understand why this individual gets off with a slap on the wrist. A slap on the wrist for something like that. Therefore, I make the suggestion. A serious investigation should be set up to investigate one, albeit the individual is entitled to defense, but the lawyer should be investigated who defended him. Two, that the judicial officer, be it a magistrate, a judge, or a justice, or whatever you wish to call them, should also be investigated, because this is a criminal of heinous nature, and this should never be allowed to go as it went. Have a nice day, will you? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Citizen Rollo.
Everybody hates a lawyer until you need one. Yes?
We need that.
Until you need one. So lawyers are, it's a profession where you recognize that you are in the bullseye a lot, and people really do when a lawyer defends, that's our job.
It's not only your profession, it's our profession as well. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yes.
So, we can relate
I don't really, quote-unquote, blame the defense attorney, because that's your job. I'm paying you to defend me and get me the lightest sentence possible, basically. So I don't really blame the lawyer. But my question is as it relates to the lawyer, the defendant. He has been identified as the husband of one of our sitting MPs, parliamentarians. And the question that I've heard on social media is, should he have recused himself from the case, knowing that his wife is a member of the government and he's basically fighting the state in this case?
Well, then he shouldn't ever take a case against the government, yes? We know that, for example, senators, unelected members do retain their license and can practice law. I think that's a bridge too far. There's no in all criminal cases, the state is always the plaintiff.
Right.
So I think it's difficult. I mean, his integrity has not been compromised. There's no indication that he has done anything that would have compromised either his wife's position or he has sought no favors from the court. And I doubt it. I mean, I know the judicial officer here, and I've had similar cases where she has sent many cases like this up to the High Court because they are indictable. So as I said, this may be an aberrant case, circumstances of which I don't understand it either.
Right.
Yes, it's strange to me. But
let's just take another phone call.
Sure.
Good morning.
Good morning, Miss Blossom. Miss Blossom, I want to say this. I am here at a senior citizen home. She's 89. And listening to this, you know what she says? I would have taken a piece of wood and I would have go for this guy. Just to say this. Mr. Rollo, I agree with you. No, Mr. Lawyer. What is happening here in Grenada, let's forget abroad for a bit. If it were your child, your brother, your niece, your daughter, would you think about it differently? But Mr. Lawyer, what is happening here? That people, the problem is the law. The problem is our system. That when you commit a crime, and according to who you are, in what society, especially if you're at large, you're big and you're at large, you can do anything, your money talk. The lawyer, the judges, the money speak loud. And they walk in there and come out with a slap, with a smile, with a kiss, with a bouquet of flowers. Because, for instance, if the Governor General had a son, a daughter, a niece, or nephew, and something like whatever there happened to that child, it will never go like one of us poor children. And if the law, before I get into that, many persons come on the TV and talks about Carnival. So then we are aware that it's a bad influence. Why permit it? Now, if the law, to get this country straight, you see the revolution, I was never a supporter of it, but they violate the Constitution. But if the law would have come back and go under the Constitution, and when this guy's criminal, I call it criminal offense, commit those crimes, they will go and they will be prosecuted, lifetime, death row, murder, hanging, cut out the penis, take out the fingernail in a drastic. Somebody say I'm too harsh. Were they harsh when they was raping and killing the small children or adults? Were they smiling? Were the victim laughing and said, do it again?
Thank you, caller. Thank you.
I wanted to actually raise a point that Edwin said about when someone comes for the first time before the judiciary with first offense, good character, right? And what does the magistrate or the judge does when they have this glowing, conduct or character reference before them? But what about the victim? What about the victim? There's little children who it's not easy to disclose. And the trauma of disclosing and often having to stand there and to be questioned by the attorney.
Well, you know my position on that.
Well, it's difficult.
What's your position on that?
I have publicly stated, and the Jurist Project, that's a Canadian project, they've been here in Grenada and have assisted us in clearing the backlog of cases and so forth. They've suggested that Grenada do what the rest of the world does. You should never have a child under 14, particularly not just a child, but anyone, even an adult, who is a victim of a sexual assault should never be questioned by a defense lawyer. I do not do it. I actually reject it. But it's a difficult thing because we know that there are cases, and I have such cases, as do I'm sure many of my colleagues, where you have recrimination by parents of children who, after the man leaves, sets up the child to make claims against the boyfriend or the husband. This is not unique to Grenada. This is something, but it's almost as though, Blossom, a child is raped twice, or the victim is hurt twice. To stand up and have to recount. Yeah. I remember I was in the Victoria court, and I could see the magistrate cringing. It was a cousin of Braxton. What's the name of the singer?
Tony Braxton.
Tony Braxton's cousin, our first cousin, was here in Grenada visiting her boyfriend. And she was sexually assaulted. Actually, she was raped. She was an adult. And she had to recount all of this. And afterwards, she told me, she says, why are they doing this? Why is this? Is this the norm? Mm-hmm. So the Jurist Project actually suggested that Grenada evolve this practice and do what happens in most courts, where you have the victim going in camera, that means in chambers, with the judge and a social worker, an expert.
That's right.
And actually talk, recount. And that the truth has never been a victim of this procedure, right? It has proven to be very effective in getting the entire truth out, than to have an 11-year-old be subject to a barrage of questions. I was in Satyrs, and one of my colleagues said, I can't do it, because the child was weak, couldn't even answer when it was...
Are we moving towards this?
This is really something.
Towards this?
Yeah.
Are we moving towards this? Because I have been talking about this
for ages,
over 20 years.
Oh,
and
what would
still nothing has been done.
Well, Rollo pointed it out. Yeah. I mean, I disagree with some of what he said, but as he said, it is really the legislature. This is who writes our criminal code.
We need to fix the law. That's
correct.
That's what needs to happen.
Correct.
Okay,
with respect to that.
Let's take another phone call. Good morning.
Good morning. How you guys doing? You know, when you talk about good character, you know, I follow the case a little bit, and I see how this guy could be of a good character. Because, you know, like somebody passing and they see a mango, they go pick it up and you want to see them and you want to bring them up, and as their first offense, taking a mango. This guy, you know, this crime is so crazy. You know, this guy willfully did that, you know, willfully, you know, and he scarred the child for life. I think the main thing should be investigating that judge to see how she could come up with this lame, you know, punishment. That should be the real case, yeah. Investigate that judge and see how she come up with that punishment. Something is wrong there.
What if she had given him 100 years? Should she be investigated? Right. So the issue really is not the judicial officer. It's the law. It's the law. We have to reform the law, and we have sentencing guidelines that are going to be coming into place soon.
You're actually saying then, Edwin, because summary offences dealt with at the magistrate court, and that would have been the only thing that was available to this magistrate.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So she couldn't. She couldn't.
No.
We don't know.
No. Again, it's the police bring a charge before the magistrate.
Yeah.
And the magistrate is bound by the law. Now, maybe she had other options, and the greatest legal mind in our country, some would say, well, the people who prosecute these crimes on behalf of the state is the DPP. That's our highest prosecutors, and they have determined that they are going to appeal this sentence. I don't have any more information than that.
Yes,
but let's see.
I find it very hard to believe that one of the options she had was $600 to be given to
therapy.
I was about to ask, how is it that the state gets more than the victim? One, and two, $600 for that is lifetime therapy.
That's right.
And at 5 years, we're talking, let's say life expectancy. So let's say we're talking 60 years. of therapy. $600 can't do it. Well, $6 can't do it.
I think it's because we don't understand trauma here in Grenada. It happened already. Let's get on with it. But we don't see the psychological problems, right? Ramifications of that. So when our children start committing suicide or doing all sort of self-harm or they're behaving, what we'll call bad in our society, we start saying, but we breed the monsters in our society.
I agree.
We breed the monsters, and we have to change in the way we actually deal with that. You said about the police brings information. I don't know, some of the evidence. I mean, because if the DPP decides they're going to go to court with a case, they must realize that they have the best evidence. Solid evidence. And I can tell you, I'm not so sure if this is the case. This happens on many cases. Because I cannot understand. Good lawyer, your learned friend, can find ways to get people off that we know that they're guilty, and they've been able to get off, walk free. So how is it that the DPP has concrete evidence?
I don't know that guilt is that we could treat guilt as punishable only by being imprisoned.
No, we're not saying
there are other ways to treat guilt.
Yes. $2,100 is not it.
Well, I don't know.
You're not guilty then, are you?
Well, the whipping boy of society, whenever we have these such egregious cases, is always the law. The law will take a hit, or the judicial officer, or the lawyer. Somebody has to get it. Yes.
You said, of course I do. Yeah. You said something about 60 years of therapy. Well, Dr. Panchu, in an interview, said the perpetrators should be writing a check for 20 years for therapy for this young boy. I would go even further and put another 10 years on it and say 30 years. You said 60 years. I would say 30
lifetime, because lifetime trauma.
And speaking of the perpetrator, we're quickly running out of time. I wanted to deal with this.
Gosh.
After being fined $2,100 on Wednesday, the perpetrator left the island on Friday. And it said that if the case goes forward with the DPP's appeal, they would have to file extradition orders to get him back into the island. But the question is, 2 days after being fined of such a crime, you can leave the island. How is that possible?
Well, if we look at the facts of this case, I'm sure we all want to throw boulders and to block Morris Bishop Airport from the jet leaving the tarmac, yes? But once the court has, and generally, once the court has meted out a sentence and you've served that sentence, you're free to go. You're free to go. As I said, a gentleman, a not-so-good citizen, is going to be in Richmond Hill Prison for 21 years. There's so many of these accused persons, and that's what they are, until they're convicted. We don't know that they are guilty until they are convicted. And no one, a lawyer is a citizen. I mean, I got heat, for example, from the general public and in the media when I suggested that a man who had raped an 84-year-old woman, who had committed a sexual offense and got out of jail, and the day following, he put Vaseline and tar, after he got out after serving 4 years, put Vaseline and tar on his body and robbed and assaulted another woman. Right? So he was out for only 1 day. No. And he said he wanted to go back to prison.
Yeah, no help.
And I suggested to the court, because he pled guilty, and he asked me to do the mitigation for him. And I said, well, Judge, you hear him. He's saying his community is in Richmond Hill. His friends are at Richmond Hill. But I beg you, in sending him up there, please mandate counseling for him and give him the reduction in time for pleading guilty. He's entitled to that. Yes, of course, it was perceived as though I abandoned the client, but you have to reflect the reality in certain cases. There are persons, sadly, and they need help. There are persons in our society who maybe they cannot help themselves. And you've seen them, I'm sure, in your work, right? But we also have these other characters who almost boast about what they have when they accomplish the dastardly deeds. Yes, but Interpol has a way of bringing these people back in, so they have not escaped the long arm of the law. So I'm sure this matter will be dealt with during the appeal.
But if this gentleman wants to go back to prison, I mean, the condition of the prison is juicy and rosy. To want to go back inside it, I don't understand.
It is.
But that leaves
it is really something.
That leads me to the question: sentences and fines, however whatever the sentence is, it's supposed to act as a deterrent from committing the crime as well as to other offenders. So why is it that we have repeat offenders, whether it's sexual crimes or other crimes? This gentleman committed a crime to go back to prison. $2,100 is not a deterrent.
Yes, but you've mentioned one of the elements of sentencing. It is deterrence, and there is punishment, and there's rehabilitation. Yes, so there are elements of sentencing. You really have to wonder what kind of. Well, we're all human beings, and I started off by talking about living and sinning. There are some people who cannot be rehabilitated, and who will commit and will commit the most heinous crimes. This is the reality of our human existence. Unfortunately.
We just have about 3 more minutes left in the program, unfortunately, but this is not a discussion that stops here. It continues, and hopefully we'll be able to have the discussion as well. But as we sign off, any last words? Not just specific on this case in Grenville, but as it relates to child sexual abuse and how the court system deals with these cases.
I would say, Blossom, right, that we take all allegations of sexual abuse seriously, and we believe the child, because no child, I don't believe in my professional experience that any child, I mean, some of them haven't got the vocabulary to express themselves, can say, this is what has been done to me. We have to take this seriously. We have to put measures in place to stop destroying our children and their families. We cannot expect them to be wanting to report matters of such grave concerns, and they are badly led down by the system that is there to give them justice. We have to take measures to do something about that. I'm very, very deeply hurt, and I want to say, the mother of this 5-year-old, you did your very best. This was not a stranger you left your child with. This was somebody you knew for quite a while. So it is not that you took the risk of leaving him with somebody that you thought that would do that to your child.
Ms. Harris?
Yes, I want to say to parents and guardians, please protect your children as far as possible. Do not leave them at risk. Be vigilant. Do not trust. Trust people with your children, because the damage it causes, sexual abuse, is far-reaching. The effects of that, people never sometimes recover from it. The treatment that has to be given as a result of people suffering from that, being sexually abused, it's a serious matter, and we need to take it very serious.
I agree. Ms. Edwin?
Well, I can't pretend that my 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 job or my 12-hour day job excuses me from these same sentiments and these deep feelings that social workers, ordinary citizens feel. I am married. I have sisters. I am like every man and woman. The law treats with these offenses, I think, as I said, on the books. The laws are there. But the law is not divorced from the reality of our society. Look, rich people, kids don't go to jail. If you go to the jails, this is not unique to Grenada. The jails are full of poor people. And so you want to look at each case we cannot have uniformity. If Jack does the same thing as Jim, they may come from two very different places. Jim himself may have been a victim of sex abuse. And sometimes you see a lot of perpetrators of sex crimes are themselves victims. They've concealed it. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm saying that we want to treat with these things very seriously. But last thing I would say is that we have a crisis and we have to address it.
Very quickly, sex offenders registry.
I was one who was advocating for sex offenders
register. Has it been established?
No. And I think there is, when I look at what's happening here in Grenada now, in hindsight, I would say there are a number of things which needs to be done before we can
move to that.
Okay, understood. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
As I said, this discussion does not end here. We continue to have the discussion about child sexual abuse and sexual crimes in Grenada because it is happening to adults as well. This has been To The Point. My name is Blossom. Keep it locked to K105. Joseph is next with mid-morning buzz. Keep it locked.